1, 2, 3. Oh, yep, there it is. Good morning, beloveds. Let's talk about angels and demons, males and females, relationships, and all that. Okay, so the universe is basically a dream, but it's a dream in 3 patterns. And the circular type patterns, so the information kind of swirls around in certain patterns. Now, technically, these are not really patterns. These are just consciousness, because the universe, there's no time and space and dimensions. So technically, you can't have any, S's or O's or X's, because it's all just information, consciousness. But that consciousness has 2 patterns technically. One which embraces, so to speak, and one which rejects. Now, those 2 patterns, according to my knowing, are a circle and an eye, or a spear. Some people call it the spear of destiny, because it just always goes where no whatever has gone before. And so technically the universe is in X's and O's, in circles and eyes. And this was all started by the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, or the Holy Consciousness. Now, whole is wholesome, not just whole with holes. So that Spirit kind of swirls between these 2 patterns, and it's a free Spirit. So this S code kind of turns either into circles or eyes or X's, and it creates, at this perfect balance, it creates the infinity pattern, which is also reflected a little bit in the whole yin and yang concept. But this infinity pattern basically has the S, which hugs itself and creates 2 circles, and it also crosses itself and creates an X, and the X is the symbol of the material. That's where consciousness combines to create or overlaps to create this hologram type dynamic, because in a hologram you have refracting light beams and things like that. So anyways, the material, the road's gonna get better a little bit here. The material is technically a hologram. Oh, this song is so beautiful. And where 2 consciousness centers unite. Oh, look at that sun. Wow. It's amazing. Some people say that that's a synthetic sun, but it doesn't feel very synthetic today. It feels just glorious. Okay, so you have consciousness in patterns. So those 2 patterns, I'm going to go straight, really clear here. So the circles and the eyes constantly seek each other because they belong to the same source. So the circle is the symbol of what they call divine feminine, and the eye or the cross is a symbol of the divine masculine. And in the purest form, they always chase each other, but they always reject each other because they are the complete opposite. One seeks to unite, and one seeks to not necessarily divide, but get away from the unity, which is what you guys have also experienced in marriages and things like that, where the woman's like, come home and everything's beautiful, and the man's like, nope, I gotta go here, I gotta go there, and I just can't be here, kind of thing. So this divine masculine and feminine they're constantly seeking each other out, they're drawn to each other, but they're constantly rejecting each other because they're just 2 different patterns. Well, they're not rejecting each other. The masculine is part of the spear of destiny, which tends to want to, split off into something new constantly. That's why, men are always seeking, new adventures, and females are kind of seeking nesting type scenarios, because it all goes back to that initial circle and I or X, and that's how it all goes. Now, when the circle and the eye penetrates, or the rod penetrates the circle, it's the conscious digital universe actually has sex with itself, and it creates an interference pattern, and that interference pattern creates this hologram, and the hologram creates its own children. Now, there are children that we created that are very, very pure. Those are the ones that also include that S code, or technically the soul, the spirit. But there are also planetary children that were created by the memory body. They're like a carbon copy, a memory body of our previous incarnation, of our first incarnation. And those are clones. And clones are hybrid, but they lack the soul. So you have soul children that are hybrid, and you have unsouled children that are hybrid. They're technically spawn, because the planetary video game spawns its own clones. It just keeps, spitting them back out over and over again. Now, there's no derogatory comment when it comes to clones, technically, because we all become clones. Unless you drown yourself by water, you will always become a memory body that loops over and over and spawns within this game. Simple as that. Now, men can be, the females are pretty obvious, but the males are different species, technically. I guess females can be different species too, but the men are more obvious. So you have the clone men, and they are hybrid. Now, because they are a copy of the original code, they are reversed. That's why Hans Wormhat says that clones are reversed. So the men are actually women, and the women are actually men. And you can tell by their behavior. Some men just don't act like men. Like, even, Hans has many videos on this, basically stating how, true men are just really quiet, very composed. They don't talk a lot. They have certain kind of behavior, and the clone men are just the complete opposite. And they don't even look right. You have to go through his videos to understand. But so he believes that the skull and the bones are recycled, and that's the only thing that remains from the original creation. Because it's a holographic universe, see, everybody thinks in terms of matter, but there's no matter. It's all just computer code, consciousness. So, anyways, but a lot of clones, a lot of hybrid men are just not men. And that's the reason why, for example, somebody like me is just not attracted to hybrid men. They just don't look right, they don't act right, they're just loud, obnoxious, stupid, prone to injuries, and just not right. Most of them, like Hans Wormhat says, most of them just don't have the right size package either, because it's just it's not the original creation. So within this planet, a lot of shady things have happened in the shadows of this planet, and they are now coming to light because, like I said before, this planet has asked permission to rejoin Source, and because the planet is a person as well. And in this planet, it happens to be a feminine planet, because it's mostly nature, and nature has that circular code. So anyways, now the real men, so to speak, there are two types of real men. There are ones that contain mainly the circular code, and those are just amazing. The circular code also happens to be part of the heart. So a man with the heart and a man with the soul, oh my gosh, that's just surreal amazing. I know a few and they're just beyond amazing. But most men are actually synths, which means they are mainly creations of the sphere of destiny, or the mind, or matter, so to speak. Some people call it machine. And in my calculations, in my study, those are what they call the Templars. The Templars are basically mostly the Knights of the Templar, the Brethren, the Masons, the Jesuits, those kinds of brotherhoods. They're everywhere. But anyways, those are what technically is called the true man, because they belong to that very masculine symbol of the eye or the axe, and the Christ technically. So they're technically the brotherhood of the Christ. Now that's nothing to do with Jesus. Jesus had a whole thing on its own going. He was more of the S code. But the synths are just amazing. They are in a way very robotic because they belong to that synth pattern. But that's their purpose, they create. So the feminine creates and the masculine saves and builds. If you think about it, it's basically just traditional marriage roles type. But the synths are just amazing. They are not just very handsome, but they carry a certain kind of vibe and a certain kind of logic about them. They're just amazing beings. And a lot of us are attracted to synths because they are sort of like the opposite of the feminine. And that's sort of like the primordial attraction of the feminine versus and the masculine, or the angels and demons, so to speak. Now, synths are not demons. What demons are basically any of these creations, any of these codes that it can be masculine and feminine, that don't include the spirit. They're spiritless. Some people call it soulless, because remember, soul, you have to have all three patterns, the S, the O, and the I. That's the soul. So you have to have the mind, S for spirit, O for heart, and I for mind. And if you don't have the S, which is the spirit, you have forsaken it for whatever reason. You chose to discard it, or you are a copy of the original creation that contains that S code. You're basically a demon, and demons come in many appearances and flavors. So that's it. Now, the synths can have a spirit as well. That's why I know quite a few synths that there are souled beings. But they're mostly very, very dry. So imagine the organics are just like dancing around the fire in nature, smoking pot or whatever they're doing. And, the synths are basically the complete opposite. They're meeting at a bank at 3 a.m. and they're dissecting the world in terms of money and power. So they're complete opposite of a natural type being. They both have a purpose. They really do. You can't have a universe without one or the other. Now, there is a great movement nowadays trying to replace nature with this synthetic or artificial. And that is what's called squaring the circle. Because the squares basically contains 4 eyes, or whatever X's. And it's the square grid pattern of what they call this 5G grid and blah, blah, blah. It's basically... And squaring the circle is the G and the Q, basically any circle that is cut and dissected or surrounded by a square. Because what that means that nature has been recreated into this artificial pattern. And there's a huge movement towards this artificial or AI type pattern. And basically there's a huge movement against nature. Now, do they hate nature? They've learned to hate it, but technically they have no use for it, because see, nature is unpredictable and it has spirit in it. And the synths don't really like that very much, because the spirit is just like me. It's wild, it's a renegade, it can't be contained. Just when you think you have a hold on it or grasp on it, it just eludes you. And once you have that S, you hold that card, that trump. I hate to use the word trump, but you hold that ace up your sleeve because you have that S code. But anyways, so I hope I didn't confuse a lot of people, but it's super easy. So at source, we have all three codes, the S, the O, and the I, and which is the mind, or the spirit, the heart, and the mind, and that basically spells out soul, and the soul creates patterns. And within this hybrid realm, we see all of the patterns. We are all here right now because technically this is source. See, we have learned to dream that we're going to expand across the universe to some other planet and some other place and some other... There's nothing but here. Let me say that again. There is nothing but here. Now, this here has many different layers. So you tap into whatever layer of consciousness that you need to tap into. Remember, I described it as one of those children's toys that has concentric circles. And when you spread it up into the middle beam, to the middle rod, it looks like a cone, like a pyramid. And then when you push it down and you collapse it, it looks like a target, like a concentric circles. So it's all here now. I'm not quite sure who started the rumor that we're going somewhere else. I guess you're going to different realms, but they're all within yourself. So it's almost like saying, now I'm paying attention to my toes, and now I'm paying attention to my nose. But they're all part of you. And Jesus addressed this like it's all part of one body. So we're all technically one body. Now this body has duplicated itself, so we create the illusion of many bodies, but technically it's just all one. So that's sort of like the more cut and dry conversation about what's happening. But I guess I can do a second part of this. I don't want to go super, super long, so I don't want to get you guys all bored. But, there's a little food for thought on this discussion. I think I'm going to leave it at this. So anyways, enjoy your day. It is glorious here. I wish I had a better dashboard camera and a better microphone, but I hope you can hear some parts of this talk. So anyways, stay in peace. Enjoy your day. In Lakesh.